In some ways, this lesson takes us back to the beginning, as we will be making lollipops again. It's worth doing, however, because you start to understand that the lollipop shape isn't just about going around a round bead. A lollipop can be made around any shape bead, square, marquee, triangle. What truly makes a lollipop shape a lollipop is that you have a single stack that wraps one time around a bead and has a single two-sided join at the bottom. Because we're going to be wrapping one of the spindle beads, the marquee-shaped beads, we have further to go to get to the center bottom. So you might choose to use 3 larger shaping stitches, 2 large ones and a small one, or you might choose to use a total of 5. In this video, I used 5. And you can see that we had to go a lot further along the stack in order to equal half the circumference of the bead. Other than that, we really follow all of the same instructions for making a lollipop. We joined our stack together by sewing a certain number of shaping stitches in one direction, added our bead, sewed back up through or toward the knot, and now we are sewing our stack together in the opposite direction so that we can cover the other side of the bead. Sew back up through the bead. Sew through the stack, and then of course sew back down through the stack and the bead. And then we pinch the strands together to make the two-sided join. Something to notice here is that the acute angle of the bottom of the spindle bead makes that two-sided join a lot easier to do. It makes the join a lot more invisible. Conversely, if you're working with a really big round bead or square bead, you're going to have to work a lot harder to get a tight, invisible join on the flat side of a square or underneath a very big round bead. We've added jump rings before when we were building the earring portion of this project. I'm going to give you my little hint for making sure that the jump ring really stays where you want it so that it's not dangling off the end of your work. So here I'm just tracing a path through my work so that I can get my thread to exit pretty much where I want to station my jump ring, which is at the tip of this spindle bead. And I'm picking up a jump ring. And I begin that series of whip stitches that go through the stack and through the jump ring each time. I'm going to do that until I build up a nice girdle of thread. So here's the really small detail that can make a very big difference in the look of your finished work. Here you see that my jump ring is hanging on that girdle of thread, but it could pull all the way to the end of the work. We want it set down behind the work, where you can see I just pushed it down. And the way we're going to keep it there is to take a small stitch backward halfway through the stack. You can see I started on the outside of the stack, and I've gone through about 2 layers of soutache. Then I go through the jump ring, and I continue on with another series of whip stitches, just as I did in the beginning. All that's happening here is that one little stitch is acting like a brake. It's going to keep that jump ring from being able to slide all the way up behind the whip stitches and hang off the end of the work. On really nice finished work, jump rings are only half exposed. You never see the whole jump ring just hanging off the very, very edge of the work. Some of this is a structural detail. It will make the jump ring a lot more stable long term over the life of the jewelry, but it also looks a lot nicer. A splash is really just two or more lollipops that are joined side by side in the same plane, and they're usually then attached behind another piece of work. They become what we call a layered component. Here are my three lollipops. You can see that I made the one in the center just a slightly different color than the two on the sides. Start with two of the lollipops and start with the middle one. Sew through the stack and then sew back through. Retrace your thread path and pick up the next lollipop. Kind of set them side by side. I think it's helpful to see this particular technique done in a video format or a live format because people can get kind of frustrated with this if they're trying to work just from instructions. Mostly because there's a tremendous desire to have all of the pieces fit together perfectly right away. Think about this part more as a kind of a soft sculpture, something that is going to come into shape slowly and gradually. So your first couple of stitches should be loose, and you can see that there's a significant gap between the two lollipops. Be patient with that. Go back and forth between the two lollipops and add your thread tension gradually. Don't try to put all the tension on at once. As you do it, and as you take your stitches through the joins over and over and over again, you're going to see that it starts to take shape. When you add in your third lollipop, you're going to go through the same process. At first, it's going to feel like it's not going to fit, it's not going to be the right shape, but trust me, if you just take several stitches and add your thread tension slowly, just a little bit more thread tension with each successive pass, it's going to bend and shape to form to the others. Here you can see at this stage it's looking particularly wonky. This is that moment where you can start to feel like this just can't be right. Just be patient with it. Keep sort of massaging it and sculpting it. Keep getting all of your stacks to lie in the same plane, and just keep making your stitches back and forth through the stacks, adding a little more thread tension each time. Once you get your pieces essentially organized, you can sculpt it even a little bit further. Here you can see the gap between the far right lollipop and the middle lollipop. I'm not even really sewing through the entire triple stack. I just went through kind of on an angle to help pull one shape into the other. And then you can turn around and go back out the same side. Just remember, there's no hard and fast rules here about you must go all the way through or you must come out here or there. As long as you pull things into shape and the stitches are hidden, you're in good shape. And here's your finished splash. Just needs to be trimmed, and we'll attach it in the next lesson.